He wasn't born a hero, and he definitely didn't ask to be one. Tony Stark was a man who built missiles before he built miracles, and his legacy started in the wreckage of his own empire. He was the least likely person to save the world, and that's exactly what makes his story so powerful. Because when you strip away the fame and the genius, you're left with someone who chose to change, when it would have been easier to stay the same. Every generation gets a symbol, someone who defines what sacrifice looks like, and for this era, that symbol was Iron Man. Not because he was perfect or fearless, but because he constantly faced the fire and stepped forward anyway. He made mistakes, he hurt people, he ran from his past, but somehow he always came back stronger. And in a universe filled with gods and legends, it was the flawed man in the metal suit who stole our hearts. There's something deeply human about Tony's journey, something raw and unpolished that made us root for him, even when he was wrong. He never pretended to have all the answers, and sometimes he created more problems than he solved, but he kept showing up. And that consistency, that willingness to grow, made him a rare kind of hero. One who didn't just protect the world, but learned how to love it too. When you think about what it means to truly save the world, it goes far beyond snapping fingers or battling aliens. It's about the quiet decisions, the invisible sacrifices, the moments when no one is watching. Tony didn't just fight villains, he fought himself. And that battle defined everything he did. His story was never about glory, it was about redemption. And in the end, he gave us a version of heroism that felt deeply personal. In this video, we're diving into the story of Iron Man and how he saved the world, not just with tech, but with heart. We'll break down his evolution from arms dealer to savior, examine the mistakes that shaped him, and explore the legacy he left behind. This isn't just a recap, it's a tribute to the man who proved that even the most broken people can do something beautiful. So if you've ever wondered what it really takes to go from selfishness to selflessness, from ego to empathy, then stick around. Because Tony Stark's story isn't just the backbone of the MCU, it's a mirror of what transformation can truly look like. And by the end of this video, you might just see the man in the suit in a way you never have before. Before Iron Man became a symbol of sacrifice, Tony Stark was something else entirely. He was reckless, arrogant, brilliant, and completely untouchable. A billionaire who built weapons not just for profit, but for pride. His world was fast and loud and empty, and he didn't even know it until it all came crashing down. Captured in a cave, far from his empire, Tony met the weight of his own actions face to face. He saw the destruction his inventions had caused, not on a screen or in a report, but in real time. That moment broke him in a way that was necessary. He didn't die, but something inside him definitely did. And what was left wasn't just a man with a second chance. It was someone who finally understood the cost of power. The first suit wasn't polished or shiny, it was raw, desperate, and made with shaking hands. But that suit marked the beginning of a promise he hadn't spoken yet. A promise to never go back. That cave didn't just change Tony, it redefined him. It peeled back the genius and the ego, and showed us the soul buried underneath. A man who could no longer look away from the world he helped break. And for the first time in his life, Tony Stark decided to build something not for himself, but to fix what he'd shattered. Tony's story is defined by invention, but it's shaped by failure. Every time he built a new suit, every time he upgraded his tech, he was trying to stay one step ahead of his own guilt. He couldn't outrun it, but he sure as hell tried. The suits were armor, but they were also walls between him and the world. The Battle of New York showed Tony what true terror looked like. Not just alien invaders, but the feeling of being helpless. Of watching something bigger than him, and realizing he couldn't solve everything with a blueprint. That panic didn't leave him, it grew inside him, and started to take over. That's why Ultron happened. It wasn't just a miscalculation, it was a desperate attempt to keep the world safe by force. Tony wanted to build a suit of armor around the planet, because deep down he didn't trust himself to protect it any other way. But it backfired like so many of his plans do. Still, Tony kept going. He learned the hard way that fear can't be coded into safety. He kept building not because he wanted control, but because he needed redemption. And through every mistake, through every heartbreak, his mission slowly shifted from self-preservation to selflessness. For all the metal and explosions, Tony Stark's journey was always about something much quieter. It was about finding a reason to care beyond himself. Pepper was the first one who saw past the sarcasm and brilliance to the brokenness underneath. She didn't just love Tony, she challenged him. Their relationship wasn't smooth or perfect, but it grounded him. It reminded him that there was a life outside the suit one that was worth protecting, even if it meant stepping away. And that tension lived inside him constantly. The push and pull between saving the world and living in it. And then came Peter. Not just a protege, but someone Tony saw as a chance to do better. To guide instead of control, to protect without smothering. Tony never had a father figure who showed him the way, and with Peter he tried to become that figure. Sometimes clumsy, sometimes wrong, but always trying. These people didn't just support Tony, they reshaped him. They showed him what it meant to fight, not just for peace, but for people, for love and laughter, and the quiet things that make the chaos worthwhile. And that's what made his final choice, not just powerful, but deeply personal. When Thanos snapped his fingers, everything Tony feared became real. Half the universe gone, and all his worst nightmares realized. But instead of collapsing, he adapted. He found a life with Pepper, a child he never thought he deserved, and for a while, peace seemed possible. But heroes don't rest when others are suffering. Tony knew the cost of returning to the fight, and he did it anyway. He knew the risks, knew what he stood to lose, and still he chose to put everything on the line. Because this time it wasn't about fixing his past, it was about securing everyone's future. When he stole the stones and snapped them back, it wasn't a flashy moment. It was quiet, brutal, and final. Single act that brought balance back to the universe at the price of his own life. There was no speech, no second chance, just one last moment where he got to choose who he wanted to be, and he chose to be Iron Man. Not the billionaire, not the genius, but the man who gave everything to save everyone. It wasn't destiny, it wasn't obligation, it was love. Love for his friends, his family, his world. And in that moment, the man who once only cared about himself became the man who saved us all. Tony's death didn't end his story, it cemented it. He left behind more than tech and towers, he left a blueprint for what it means to be a hero. One that's messy, complicated, and rooted in choice. He wasn't perfect, and that's what made him matter even more. Peter carried his grief like armor, trying to be the next Iron Man, while still figuring out who he was. Pepper raised their daughter with the quiet strength Tony always admired, but never mastered. And the world moved forward, holding on to the echo of his sacrifice in everything they built. The Avengers fractured and reformed, but his absence was always felt. The man who started it all left a hole no invention could fill. And yet in every mission, every battle, every quiet moment where someone chooses courage over comfort, Tony's influence lingers. He didn't just save the world, he reminded us that redemption is always possible. That broken people can still do something great. And that maybe the most powerful thing a person can do is not live forever, but give everything in one final moment of truth. The story of Iron Man isn't just a story of suits and science, it's the journey of a man who changed. A man who started in shadows and ended in light. Tony Stark didn't save the world because he was the smartest or strongest, he saved it because he chose to grow. He faced his failures and used them as fuel. He loved deeply and sacrificed quietly. And in a universe filled with gods and monsters, he stood out by being unmistakably human. That's what made him a hero, not just to the world and the story, but to everyone watching. We saw ourselves in Tony, not because we're geniuses or billionaires, but because we've all struggled to be better. We've all battled guilt and chased meaning and wondered if we were doing enough. Tony showed us that greatness isn't about perfection, it's about persistence. So yes, he saved the world. But more than that, he reminded us what it means to fight for something bigger than ourselves. And in the end, that legacy will shine far longer than any arc reactor ever could.